The only external thing is the action itself. But actions don't have one universal meaning. Actions can only speak louder than words when their intentions are clear. When a intrusive negative thought about yourself comes in, I'm not worth it. Don't put a period, put a semicolon, and then what is something about yourself that is worth it? Understand, like, when I walk away is not me being disrespectful, right? Me walking away means I really need time to decompress because I'm about to explode.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Onion Soup. I'm truly excited to have our guest on today, Dr. Patricia Timerman. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing wonderful. I'm so excited because this is one of my favorite topics when we talk about mental health and specifically in the realms of communication. So, really quick background. I know that you're a mental health counselor. You focus on marriage and family therapy. Tell us a little bit about that and how you got started.
I kind of went around before actually diving into mental health. I tend to say that it chose me more so than I chose it. It's come my way a couple of times and I'm like, nope, nope. And then when it came again, I'm like, you know what? Let's go for it. When I did my bachelor's, I then was going to apply for medical school, took a year off and started looking at other things because I didn't feel ready and, a couple things. And, um, I decided to do a master's and I love education. So I started looking into education and then this master's in mental health and marriage and family, from Barry University just jumped out at me. And I started it and I fell in love. I actually went back to study for the MCATs because this was just like a step towards, let me go back to my medical school path. And then I realized, I guess another path has been chosen for me. Let me not try to force something that was when it no longer fits. And ended up doing my PhD instead. And that's how I landed in mental health.
I love that so much. It's funny because when I finished up my degree, I kind of had that same wrestle. I was debating on whether or not I should go back to school and grab a PhD or do I continue in other avenues. I chose the other avenues path. But I really want to dive into your book. Why are we fighting? Because I feel like I ask myself that all the time. Why are we fighting? And in your book, you talk about the IAP model that you created, where it's intention, action, perception. Tell us about that IAP model and why are we fighting?
I'll start with why are we fighting? I think there are fights that are definitely meaningful and purposeful. And the reason for conflict resolution is because to enter resolution, we need to talk about our differences in order to negotiate, compromise, and, go from there. So fighting is important. It's just what is productive fighting from unproductive fighting. Right. And so understanding the IAP model becomes really cool because our intention, so IAP stands for intention, action, perception. There are internal factors of the IAP, which are the intention and the perception. Intention is internal to me. Only I know my intentions behind the things that I do, the things that I say, my verbals and nonverbals, the things that I say and don't, my silence. Sometimes I may not even be aware of what my intention is altogether. Um, Perception is also internal, but it's internal to the receiver. So right now you and I are talking and I'm big with gestures, as you can see, like my tap dancing. Okay. Very animated, as you can see. Perception would be internal to you, the receiver or observer of the action itself. But your perception is colored by your experiences growing up and the way that you see life and the way that life has treated you and you have treated it, right? The only external thing is the action itself. But actions don't have one universal meaning. In the back of my book, I said, actions can only speak louder than words when their intentions are clear. So when we say actions speak louder than words, the implication there is that I know exactly what your actions are telling me. And this is true when, let's say, you and I are talking about something and I say something, but I act differently. Then you can tell me actions speak louder than words because what you're saying and what you're doing are incongruent. So I am relying on the data of your actions because the data of your words are not sustained by it, right? Your actions don't corroborate it. But just in general, actions speak louder than words. I mean, if I don't know what they're saying. So it can lead to miscommunication.
Wow, when we're talking about the intention behind an individual's actions, a lot of times we don't really, as you said earlier, know what our intentions are. What if we're in the heat of the moment? And that typically is what leads to the miscommunication because we ourselves don't really know how to regulate our own nervous system. We don't know how to regulate our own emotions. How do you get someone, or what do you say to someone who says, while that wasn't my intention, I can't exactly say what I was doing or what I was thinking in that moment?
I mean, that's a great question, right? Because it wasn't my intention, however, I did it. So it can be, it depends if it is something that I said or something that I did and how it was received. And what I can say, I can validate the fact that now that we're talking, like as the receiver, I understand that it landed as passive aggressiveness, right? An example. Um, Truly, I don't know what the intention was. I think it may even have been that it was more automatic and involuntary than it was voluntary. I will try not to continue doing the same thing, right? Because one of the things that I talk about in the book is what I call WACA, with awareness comes action. Um, and so if I become aware of something that I'm doing, that it's not intentional, but that it is landing in a way that is either hurtful or, in ways that other people, not just one person, like with that one person, then I know with that one individual,
Yeah.
but even with other people, one thing that I like to say is, when do I need to check myself? Right? If I have two, three, four people telling me that it's landing what seems to be an intentional way, and the intentional way isn't seen as a positive thing, and I'm keep on saying no, but I am not intending to do that, then I need to check myself because there's data showing me that do I really not have any intention behind it, and if I don't, why do I keep on doing it?
I love that so much. When we talk so much about our actions towards others, whether they be intended or non-intended, at what point do we take a step back and we have that conversation with ourselves? Because a lot of times people speak very negatively to themselves, and then that oftentimes gets projected onto others. So, in what ways does miscommunication really start with that internal dialogue, and how can we adjust that?
Oh, I love your questions. Okay. Um, there are a couple of different things, right? I think even in the IAP, one of the things that I talk, especially with my clients, is how do you talk to yourself and be intentional in how you speak with yourself. Sometimes when we're very self-deprecating, and I'm gonna go somewhere else, and I will come back here. But depending on how we grow up, or even if we are struggling with depression, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, right? But sometimes even from a cultural background, we may notice that criticisms have validity to it because they tell you where you need to grow or what you're doing wrong to right it, right? Whereas compliments, depending on the culture you come from, can be seen as empty fluff, not having any purpose to it. So the point that I created what I call instructive compliments, which is letting you know what you are doing right so that you don't need to change.
Yeah.
Right. So the same purpose that a criticism serves, so does understanding what I'm doing right. So then I can only focus on the other areas. So if I'm being self-deprecating and the purpose of it, I tell myself is to grow as a human, it's important to know not only what I'm doing wrong, but also what I'm doing right. Okay. So
Mhm.
that's one thing. Another one, like, let's say anxiety, depression, intrusive thoughts, self-deprecation. If you're going to be your worst enemy unintentionally, automatically, it's not something that you control, voluntarily become your best friend, right? So when a intrusive negative thought about yourself comes in, I'm not worth it. Don't put a period, put a semicolon, and then what is something about yourself that is worth it? right? So I'm not worth it, but you know what? I look really good today. Right. So if you're gonna I call this a cognitive balance, right? It's hard for us to eliminate the negative because it is so involuntary. So make sure that it ends with a voluntary thought that is more nurturing to yourself.
Hmm. I love that so much when we dive into layering on that positive reinforcement on top of those negative thoughts and actions. From your perspective, Dr. Timmerman, what is the importance, if at all, for people to go back and do that inner child's work, that early childhood development work, to see where those negative thoughts might have originated?
So the reasoning behind going towards our childhood or towards our past is we're a construct of our experiences. And so many of our experiences just become ingrained in us and we're not really aware. So for example, the way that I walk, I don't really notice how I walk unless like I want to do like a cool walk and I want to change it a little bit. Now let's say that I kind of start doing that. And then it's been 10 years and I've been walking in that way. I forget the reason why I started doing it in the first place, right? And I don't question it. It's very similar when we talk about going back to our childhood and our relationship with our parents or the people around us. I said earlier, when we talk about our perception is a construct of the experiences we have of the world, both in our responses to it and its responses to us. Right? We can talk about social economic status. We can talk about sexual orientation. We can talk about race, ethnicity, culture. We all receive different responses. So to say that one thing would be viewed the exact same way by everybody is really not true, right? Because we are not taking accountability of our differences, and going to our past experiences just allows us to understand like where does our current thinking come from. So like let's an example, if I notice as I'm going through it, I had parents that were very anxious and I always worst case scenario, and today I'm very worst case scenario. Sometimes knowing where it comes from can help us remediate it. Have you ever watched the show Everybody Loves Raymond?
Yes, really good.
Okay. There is this episode where I don't know if you remember. So Robert, who's the older brother, every time he would eat, he would go here and then eat. He would go hit the chin and eat, right? And there was this one episode, and I don't remember which one it was, but it really stayed with me, where Deborah, Raymond's wife, asked why you do that. Like, when did it start? And he said, when mom brought Raymond, she stopped taking care of me, instead started taking care of him and started feeding him. And when she would feed him, as food would fall, she would do this from the chin so he started doing the same thing,
Hmm.
right? That was a defense mechanism for feeling lack of love and wanting to feel the same nurture that mom did. So I'm going to do the same thing, even though she's not doing it to me, I'm doing it to myself. And the defense mechanism just became a way of life and it never got questioned. Once it gets questioned and he would do it again, you notice that he kind of started to like, now I know why. Like, do I need to continue? So with awareness, there's adjustment for action to take place.
As we dive into becoming more aware of our idiosyncrasies and the things that we probably picked up over the years, when you have someone who says, I'm ready to change, I'm ready to make a mental switch over, I'm ready to start layering that positivity, how do you help them adjust their actual perception of reality? Because though it might shift in their minds, their outward perception of reality might still be, let's say, negative, for lack of a better word. You can have a person be positive in their heads, but around them they're still seeing that negativity, such as the red car syndrome. When you think of a red car, you see a red car. When you think of something negative, you see something negative. Think of something positive, you see something positive. How do you make that switch from their actual reality?
I like data gathering. So what I mean by that is, let's say like I've had 3 phone calls in my life that have been awful, worst possible case scenario, right? Like someone's that, whatever it was, 3 phone calls that were really bad. Whenever the phone rings, I will likely have a negative reaction or a trigger,
Mm-hmm.
possibly a panic attack, because my assumption is that's going to be a worst case scenario. But I failed to take into consideration that in the totality of all the phone calls I've had in my life, those three, although they weigh a lot more, it's maybe, I mean, exacerbating the amount at most 10%, right? Or let's say not even like 5% of the totality of calls that I get. So to become aware of how often does the worst case scenario actually plays a part out of all of the times that I have a similar experience is the concept of somebody who has claustrophobia and feel like the
Mm-hmm.
walls are closing in on them is to show them the measurement,
Mm-hmm.
right? In the room, I am showing you data that no, the walls are remaining the same place as they were before you started feeling them. And that data helps ground our mind.
Mm-hmm. Wow, when we're talking about those responses and having the external stimuli and having a proper response to it, how do you help mitigate someone who has the physiological responses? Because we can speak positively, but your cortisol still elevates. You still start sweating. So how do you help with those responses when you experience those traumatic triggers?
So I love that you're bringing this up. Our body and our mind are intertwined. So I do work a lot with the physiological as I do the psychological, and there are a couple different things that I can bring about. For example, when somebody's having a panic attack, one of the exercises, a grounding exercise, and grounding is because it brings you down. One of them is what we call the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which are all of our
Mm-hmm.
five senses, right? So, what are five things that you see? So I go 5, 4, 3. No, wait, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, what are five things that I see? What are four things that I touch? What are three things that I hear? What are two things that I smell? What's one thing that I taste? The reason for that is because when our mind goes somewhere, our body follows. What we're trying to do is bring our body to the present moment. So when you are looking at what are five things that I see, I'm having to engage in my current environment. When I am thinking of four things, not thinking, touching four things that I feel,
Yeah.
how does it feel? I'm having to involve myself in the environment. And so the triggering thought starts to go into the background. Um, we do some breathing exercises, and there's a guided breathing exercise. I hate it when people would tell me, just breathe. I'm like, I am breathing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be alive. Right. And so understanding the physiology behind it, understanding that in that moment, when I do become agitated or animated, if my mind absorbs something as danger or anxiety, there's a part of my body of my brain that's called the amygdala. This is not necessarily what happens. This is just for visualization purposes. Let's say this is my prefrontal cortex where I do all of
Mm-hmm.
my wonderful thinking and my decision making. Like my amygdala will take over because it sees danger. And so all of the blood, it starts going instead of towards my brain as it usually does, only enough goes so I don't pass out.
Mm-hmm.
But you notice that your heart starts beating really fast and your blood starts going towards your limbs because you have that fight, freeze, or flight,
Yeah.
right? So when we do a guided breathing, what we want to do is bring the amygdala back to homeostasis. So your heart rate starts to slow down and your body goes back to that stability.
Mm-hmm.
The most important part of this breathing is what you put your mind into. Because if, as I'm breathing, I'm thinking about the triggering thing, I'm just going to hyperventilate altogether. Right. So as I'm breathing, some people will do breathe like 3 in, hold 3 out, 3. I'll usually do 4 in slowly, 5 out slowly through your diaphragm. So your stomach goes like this, in and out. And think of something neutral, count, think of something that brings you peace, a place, a photo, anything. Another thing is if I am starting to get really animated and my voice start going like this and I start really talking really fast, what are you going to see is that you can start animating yourself, right? Our mind goes so fast that we want our mouth to meet the pace of our mind. I want you to do the other way around. Have your mind meet the pace of your mouth and give each word its due space. That's a way for you to de-animate yourself.
Mm.
Okay, I'm going to stop because I kind of gave a lot. I have a couple more, but I'll.
No, I love that so much because a lot of times we talk about exactly like you said, people say just breathe, take some deep breaths, but what does that exactly mean? And I think it's very important when you pointed out the diaphragmatic breathing because a lot of times people don't breathe deep enough. They're usually in their chest and then that chest starts to feel tight and you feel like I'm breathing, but now my anxiety is starting to intensify. But Dr. Timmerman, what do you do when it's probably not you experiencing these sensations? It's someone beside you. How do you help bring somebody, not necessarily out of the anxiety state, but just help to ground them? Because we know, for as a person who used to experience anxiety, I know that it can be a little bit debilitating. And I remember my friends trying to bring me out. I just wasn't hearing them. How do you help that person?
It's not, it depends a lot. And when I work with my clients, I try to create their manual of self. And we do like a mood scale from like 1 to 10. What is their 10? So their worst anxiety and up to a one. The symptoms, how it presents itself, and what are the strategies that we put. So I can tell you, sometimes if a person has a lot of energy and I ask them immediately to go into a breathing, it will be really difficult to sit down and do that or to pause and do that. So I need to do a muscle exhaustion with them, right? How can I exhaust your muscles in that moment in time? So like entertain me and just like, I will do like squats with them or plank. I will exhaust that energy, that angst, so then they can actually go into a breathing. So it depends where they are. Sometimes being able, and it depends on the person, being able to hug them, right? It's like that tactile sensation and allow them to, but some people really do not like being touched. So you have to kind of know them a little bit. And I will invite anyone in this moment to identify like what would work for me. Do I like being hugged? If I'm in the 1 through 10, like where is the place where I start realizing, okay, I need somebody else here with me? Or what are the things that I can do? So an example is power posing. Dr. Amy Cuddy, a couple of years back, did this great TED talk where she talks about the relationship between power posing and um, our self confidence. And what she noticed is when you open up your chest, and she'll say for about 2 minutes, it's like, so when you're opening up your chest, what do? You increase your testosterone level, you decrease your cortisol level. If you start noticing my body is concaving, my intrusive thoughts are really starting. When we concave, the opposite happens. We notice that testosterone goes down and cortisol goes up. So you notice your body doing this. Bring it up, right? Pay attention as to how you're talking to yourself. Now, these are preventatives, right? Or it can be intervention if you're noticing them in the middle of it. Um, but during a panic attack, if you're with someone, calming things, cold, right? So bringing you water, sometimes like a cold water. When somebody's sad, you can bring them something warm, but usually like it cools down your body because we get really hot during those moments. Giving them space if they need it, but if there's somebody who are open to hugging or physical contact, for sure that.
Mm. It's so interesting you say that. A lot of times, back when I was experiencing these moments, I did feel more relieved when I get up and open up my chest. And I love doing stretches nowadays anyway. But when we're talking about helping the other person, say we're in, as we started off the conversation with miscommunications, say we're actually in a moment, we're having a argument or a fight. Why are we fighting? We're having an argument or a fight with our partner or teammate or what have you. How do you stop yourself in that moment? Or what if you start having physiological reactions or you're having a panic attack while you're interacting with this person? That other person oftentimes might not be as sympathetic. How do you excuse yourself? What do you do in that moment?
I'd like in having these conversations with the individual, like if I'm in a space of, um, let's say interacting with somebody, understanding how do we work best, right? So understand like when I walk away is not me being disrespectful, right? Me walking away means I really need time to decompress because I'm about to explode. In the IAP model, one of the things that I introduced are code words. And the science behind code words is that they must have a meaning associated to them, instructions to all parties involved, and can only be used as warranted. So if you and I are having a conversation and I know that like I might struggle with disproportionate responses to triggers or like possibly have panic attacks. If I tell you like bubble gum means I gotta leave. Please don't take it personal. I really need to decompress because I'm gonna explode. Right? Then you understand because you and I are in on it what that means. And you wouldn't be perceived as how disrespectful. Let me follow you and continue with the argument.
Yeah.
Right? So there are things that we can try to converse beforehand. In the middle of it is really difficult. If you and I are talking for the first time and I start like there's very little information to begin with for us to have that. But every interaction gives us data, even negative ones, negative, positive, neutral, everything in between. It gives us data. It allows us to understand what to do and sometimes what not to do, what works and what doesn't work.